I've known that Melissa has a problem for some time now, and I'll be the first to say that I told her she needed to get help. We tried therapy, tried rehabilitation, but inevitably, she became fixated on the idea. And because I became a part of the problem rather than the solution, a price is being paid. It'll be 2 years this March since everything changed for us. Our little boy Ryland had just turned 7, searching for adventure everywhere he went. We had decided to take a family trip to the beach, just a 45-minute drive from where we stayed. It was the first time that Ryland had ever seen the ocean. I still remember the smile on his face when his toes touched the sand. Melissa was eager to have him experience the water. Everything seemed so calm that day. My wife is an experienced surfer, and had brought her board with her in case the weather permitted her to take a few waves. When he saw the board, Ryland immediately wanted to join her. At first she said no, it wasn't safe. I was the one that convinced her it would be fine. I told myself he would be safe out there in the water as long as she was by his side. I stood near the edge to get my camera out and film the whole thing. It became a memento of a disaster. The two of them climbed onto the board, and she encouraged Ryland to feel the water as she paddled away from shore. The waves were starting to climb, and I kept a good angle to see them move. Ryland was having so much fun. They both were. It all ended so quickly. I still don't know what went wrong. There was this strong north wind that came out of nowhere and knocked her board back. At first, she had complete control of it. Then the board shook. Ryland panicked. They fell backwards into the water, and I lost sight of them. Immediately, I dropped the camera and shouted to them. No response. My heart pounded. I ran to find them, trying to dip my head under the water. There was nothing to give me any sign that they were nearby. I kept shouting, trying to find them. Other swimmers also saw my frantic attempts and came running to help. Then I saw little Ryland, his body face down in the water. Was he even conscious? I carefully turned him over and tried to do CPR, pushing his chest as I searched for signs of life. His eyes were rolled back and his skin was a polished white color. How much water had he taken in his lungs? I kept pushing, trying to make him breathe. I slapped at his cheeks, checking his pulse. There was nothing. Desperate, I tried again, pressing my lips to his cold body as others gathered to see if he was going to make it. Each second that passed felt like an eternity. It didn't stop, though. Not until someone had to physically pry me from his body. I couldn't stop. That was my child. And he was gone. Amid all of this, I heard others shouting that they had found another victim of the wave. I knew it had to be Melissa. I was standing over our son's fresh corpse in a daze as they pulled her from the water and another surfer gave her mouth to mouth. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I was convinced I had lost both of them. I didn't even let hope enter my heart until I heard her gasping for air, and water spurted out of her mouth. The surfer turned her onto her side and kept her that way as she choked up more salt water and bile. I was still staring at Ryland, trying to come to terms with what had just happened. It had only been 10 minutes since they went in the water. 10 minutes ago, he was smiling, and now he was gone. Melissa became distant after the accident. Somehow, we made it through all of the motions to prepare a funeral and bury our son, but I could tell each day was like torture to her. A part of our soul had died that day, and I knew she was especially affected. I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that things weren't going to get better. But I never anticipated that they would actually get worse. I think it was only a month later when the first incident occurred. I had just come home from work and I heard the bathwater running upstairs. At first, I thought nothing of it, shedding my coat and walking the steps. Any time she had to relax was time well spent, I thought. Then I saw a trickle of water crossing the floor from under the door. I rushed to open it, calling out to Melissa as I pounded on the lock. When I didn't get a response, I found whatever I could nearby and used it as a battering ram. 3 pushes later, I found her completely submerged in the tub. My immediate reaction was to pull her out, shut off the water, and desperately perform chest compressions. She choked and sputtered a few moments later, shaking from the pressure and looking at me with sadness and disappointment. I got her blankets and gave her something to help her rest as I tried to plan what to do next. My initial response was that she needed professional help, that I couldn't give. I called the nearest hospitals, arranged for her to go to counseling, and told her that it was going to get better. I probably said that out loud because I needed to hear it too, and hoped that I could speak it into existence. But it didn't just happen because I wanted it to. That isn't how life works. The second attempt was worse. I found her unconscious in the tub and had to resuscitate her for nearly 20 minutes. I remember crying and screaming to God in heaven that I could not live without her too. When she woke up, I didn't call the hospital. For some reason, I thought if I just sat down and talked to her, we could get through this. What you're doing to yourself, it isn't going to bring Ryland back, I said as I offered her a warm meal. My wife gave a hard, stony look. You think I'm trying to kill myself? How else am I supposed to interpret your recent behavior? Melissa, this has to stop, I told her, trying to reach out for her hand. She pushed it away and stared out the window vacantly. I don't expect you to understand. It's impossible to put it into words. Please, try. She looked like she was about to cry as she sat up, and I held my breath, wondering what she might say. It wasn't the answer I anticipated. I've been stuck on that beach ever since that day, reliving it over and over. My baby, he was gone, taken from me. Would you believe me if I told you that I knew he was gone already before I even woke up? I scooted a little closer to the bed and asked her what she meant. When I hit the wave, everything was black at first. I felt nothing and I was nowhere. Except, I was somewhere. Not on that beach. It was empty at first, but it felt warm. Then I felt grass between my fingers. It was a field of white tulips. And I could smell the flowers, Daniel. I was there. And Ryland was there too. I couldn't see him, but I could feel his presence. The voice I heard was muffled, but it was his. He was trying to tell me something. Trying to give me something to hold on to. She turned to me with bloodshot eyes and sobbed out her next words. He was grasping for my hand, Daniel. We were right next to each other. And then I was snatched away. Back on that beach, gasping for air. It was so perfect and fragile. I still remember that soft light. Those tulips. And I knew when I saw him on that beach what had happened. He'd crossed over and I was stuck here. We sat there in silence for a long time, as I tried to fathom what she was telling me. The 2 attempts to take her own life made sense now. You're trying to get back there. That's why you've been doing this, I realized. You think I'm crazy. I was struggling to find the words as she pulled away from me and demanded I leave the room. Melissa, wait. I do believe you. It's just, this is a lot to process. What you're saying? It sounds impossible. I didn't believe it either at first. Not until I tried last month. I blacked out in the tub. I could start to feel that light, but I didn't make it happen, she whispered. I know you want to feel him in your arms again just one more time, and you would give anything to experience that, but this is not the solution, I told her. She said nothing, her broken eyes wandering as she promised that she wouldn't try it again. Part of me knew that she didn't mean it. Ryland and her were inseparable, and now that she had survived, she would be hollow until she got closure. So how did I help her heal? I resolved that I had to do something, and I thought I could help her in a different way by seeking a spiritual advisor. I knew that she had occasionally looked at tarot cards, so this was the next logical step for anyone trying to connect to the spirit realm. Maybe this is how you reconnect with Ryland, I suggested. She agreed to the idea, and we arranged a seance for the following night. The psychic arranged for us to meet at a small motel outside of town, even paying for the room. I thought that was a sure sign that this woman was no charlatan. She told us to bring some of Ryland's favorite items, so she could get a sense of them, and then she ordered us to close the windows and the doors. Not a drop of light or even a sound was supposed to interrupt us. Once we were immersed in darkness, we sat cross-legged on the floor. I held my wife's hand and listened as the medium lit the candles. Tonight we shall attempt to breach the veil and connect to Ryland. Close your eyes and listen to the universe around you. I did as I was told, wondering how soon it would be before Melissa felt something. I had no idea how any of this was supposed to work. As the medium lit the second candle, my wife whispered, I'm not sure this is working. It takes time. We can't simply connect because we want it to be so. There must be a ritual performed. I'm going to attempt to place you in a hypnotic state. Listen to the sound of my voice, and only the sound of my voice. Melissa and I did what we were told, but all I felt was the hard floor under our bodies. I was starting to become frustrated too. I hear a voice. It sounds like childish laughter, the psychic told us. Melissa scrunched up her face. No, I feel wrong. I feel cold and darkness. Let yourself go to what you are sensing. The psychic lit the third candle. There did feel like there was electricity in the air. Our host told Melissa to extend her hand. She began to trace the lines on her palm. There is a presence here. I feel... Wait. The psychic stopped suddenly and jerked away, even as Melissa began to sob. I was confused by the interaction, but my wife didn't want to continue. This isn't working, she stammered. Or maybe you don't want to accept what you were seeing, the psychic argued. Now I was upset. I wasn't going to have this stranger berate us. You're not going to sit here and scam us because of our grief. I need my wife to recover from this, I shouted in her face. The psychic gathered her tools in a fluster, refusing to continue because of my outburst. I apologized to Melissa, but she told me it was fine. It wasn't the same as when I went under the water. Just a hoax, she muttered. We drove back to our house in silence. I was back to square one, watching my wife walk around like a living corpse because she was chasing an impossible dream. I felt like I couldn't even perform daily activities without being sure that she would be safe. Safe from herself, above all else. I want to help you, but I don't know how, I admitted to her one day, after I found her just sitting and staring out toward the sky like a zombie. She was just a hollow shell of her former self. think you know that the only thing that will help me is if I replicate the drowning. Last week, when you had to work a double shift, I tried it when I was home alone. I set up a way where the bath would automatically drain after 15 minutes. And I think I was close, Daniel. I was surprised she admitted such a risk to me. I wanted to tell her how angry I was because she could have lost her life. But I knew that would only shut her off from me again. Are you sure this is the only way? I asked. She clung to me, desperate for acceptance. My love for her couldn't ignore the pain in her heart. All right. You can't ever do it again unless I'm nearby. I have to be able to pull you back from the edge, I told her. Somehow, my words made her smile, and she promised me she would not try it alone again. Now it was up to me to figure out how I could properly give her the closure that she wanted. I started to research everything I could find about near-death experiences, hoping that I could understand this unnatural desire that she had become obsessed with. Most of the accounts were similar, where people claimed they saw a bright light and a voice of some loved one calling out for them, just like Melissa had. Others saw their entire life flashing before their eyes, or had an out-of-body sensation. Astral projection and levitation also seemed to come into play, the way that your subconscious mind acts in a lucid dream. But it took me several days before I found people who had been doing the same thing as Melissa, attempting to recreate her brush with death. They called themselves the Flatliners, after that movie from the 90s. It was about medical students that were attempting to determine what lies beyond death, I recalled. The group I found online was similar in nature. They had no desire to end their lives, but their curiosity had pushed them to boldly test the boundaries between life and death. To get right there on the precipice and witness what's on the other side, it's the most enthralling sensation one can ever imagine, one commenter wrote. Several of them claimed they had succeeded. All it takes is practice and safety, and anyone can cross the veil. We need to get professionals involved in this so they can study our findings. The potential knowledge that we're tapping into is unlimited, another claimed. According to the Flatliners, there were definitely methods of doing this safely, and that stuck out most for me. I decided to begin corresponding with one of them who had had 2 successful sessions. He called himself Joey, and we met after work one evening. He sized me up and commented, "You're not the one who's touched the veil, are you?" "Excuse me?" I asked as we ordered drinks. "Your aura. It's not broken or scattered. You're still grounded in this realm. So then, who is the lucky guy or gal that I'm supposed to be guiding?" Joey asked. "My wife. Last spring, she nearly drowned," I told him. "I see. And so she was right there on the precipice, tasting nirvana," he said, fascinated as I recounted her experience in the fields. "So, can you help her?" "I can make it work. But you must be warned that what she's experiencing now, one simple taste of the nectar won't make the craving go away," he remarked dryly. "I'm not sure I follow your analogy," I admitted. He looked at me darkly and said, "Look, have you ever known any drug addicts, Danny? You know how they say they're always chasing that first high? What your wife felt on the beach that day is just like that. She tapped into another level of existence that most of us don't even comprehend. Don't go fooling yourself to think this will solve your issue. All I can do is try to stave off the craving, negate the damage. But you've only done it twice and found a way to control the urge? Doesn't that show it's an addiction that can be beat?" I asked. "The only difference is I wasn't connected to someone's soul when I made the leap. Your son is still tied to her in one way or another. Ain't no overcoming that," he warned. I weighed the options and realized that I still wanted to at least try. Anything had to be safer than the way she'd attempted before. That night, I told Melissa everything about the flatliners. There are risks involved, but you already know that, I said, after explaining the session that Joey was going to set up for her. Melissa showed a spark of hope for the first time in ages when I gave her the contact information. Daniel, I want you there with me, she said after she made contact. I was still uneasy about the entire process, but I promised her I would stay by her side. I also felt like if I was there, I could keep her from being taken from me entirely. It would be like walking the edge of a razor. I knew that falling and getting cut was almost inevitable. We made it to a downtown warehouse, where Joey was waiting along with a bunch of equipment that looked straight out of a science fiction novel. It reminded me of some kind of submersion tank, along with several computers and power stations, to ensure that it was all handled correctly. Since your experience involved drowning, we'll use this sensory deprivation chamber. You'll be submerged and monitored the entire time. If for any reason we feel that it's getting too risky, though, there's a failsafe, Joey explained as he showed off the console. This little needle prick will save your life, he said, slipping it next to her palm. It's one of the few objects that's been proven to be able to cross back and forth between the two planes of existence. Although, to be honest, it only works if you're the one that does it over there. The way he talked, it sounded like nonsense. A supernatural needle to jolt her back to the land of the living? She didn't question it, so I kept quiet as well, as Joey finished the prep. So, what do you say? Are you ready to change your life forever? Melissa said yes before I even got a chance to let the words sink in, and he hooked her up to several heart monitors and other medical equipment. She stripped down to her underwear and placed the electrodes on her body, as Joey prepped the syringe that was supposed to stop her heart. According to him, it would work for 3 minutes. Is that going to be enough time? I asked as we closed the top of the deprivation tank. I kissed her one more time for good luck before the seal was placed. You lost your son in only a few minutes. I think anything is possible, he told me. I sat beside him and watched the monitors as Melissa's heart rate lowered. It got slower and slower until, at last, it stopped altogether. At the same time, my own heart was pounding out of my chest. Brain activity's still good. Detecting signs of REM sleep activity. Possibly subconscious hallucinations. He was recording everything he said into a small device, treating this like a calculated study, rather than an attempt to determine if we could reach out to our son. Maybe that was the only way he could be okay with this entire process. A minute passed, and I asked what was happening. Joey said nothing as he stared at the screen. The readings were all over the place. Something's wrong, I said, the readings spiking and then plummeting in less than a second. He jumped up to the deprivation door and blocked the way. I know you think you have to save her, but she wants this, he told me. You saw those readings. We're losing her. Get out of the way, I shouted. When he refused, I punched him in the nose and forced the door open, pulling her up from the water. Melissa began to shake violently. I moved to comfort her as she squeezed her palms together and screamed in my face. I was so close. He was right there. She shoved me away from her. I tried to remain calm while Joey was still nursing a bloody nose, and Melissa demanded that we try again. Sorry, doll. Ain't happening after your Prince Charming decided to clock me, he snapped. I noticed then that there was something in the palm of my hand, where I had grabbed Melissa. The petal of a white tulip. I was staring at it, mesmerized by its beauty and what it implied, as the two argued. Then, just as Melissa called my name, I snapped out of it and placed it in my pocket, too unsure to even reveal the discovery. Joey demanded we leave immediately, and then after we got home, I found out we had been blacklisted from their little experiments altogether. This is your fault, Melissa snarled. But I wasn't about to have her berate me when I just saved her life again. My fault? Do you realize how hard it is watching you do this to yourself over and over again? When will it be enough, Melissa? What if this is too much for me? What if I can't take it anymore? You don't understand, she whispered. You're right, I don't. Ryland is gone, but I'm still here. You don't believe that. I can hear it in your voice. You want this to be real as much as I do, she stammered. I just want you to be happy. I tried to hold myself together and then excuse myself to go to the bathroom, taking the white petal out of my pocket and staring at it again. Such a simple, small thing had shaken me to my very core. Could it be possible? I recalled the way she had described the afterlife where Ryland was waiting. Had she really reached over and brought something back? Part of me wanted it to be true, and that part started to grow and shape my own thinking. She stopped talking about it after that, but the thought of what could be right there at the threshold was always fresh in my mind. I needed to know. Eventually, it got close to the anniversary, and I had been researching near-death experiences again, trying to find the perfect method. Sometime during that interval, I even reached out to the psychic to make sense of the petals. Her response wasn't what I expected either. She called a few times and left nonsensical voicemails. All of them sounded frightened, like she wanted nothing to do with us. Listen, I've been thinking about the two of you lately. Ever since... Look, yeah, I'm a con artist, but what we experienced together that night was real. More real than anything I have ever felt. I think there was a presence with us, but just not what we expected. She continued to ramble on about something else, but I stopped listening and deleted the message, frustrated by her, focusing on the flatliner message board. One article suggested obtaining transcendence required more than simply replicating the brush with death. You also needed to replicate the location. We should do something special, in his memory, I told her one day after work. She had just finished an online project and told me she wasn't sure she could handle something like that. I want to go back to the beach, where everything changed, I told her. I think Melissa wanted to say no. I thought of what Joey had warned me about. What I was offering her was equivalent to a shot of cocaine for an addict. It was right there in her face where she couldn't ignore it. So we drove down there, early in the morning when it was just the two of us. She got out in the morning air and sank her toes in the sand, letting out a long sigh as the waves slowly crashed against the shore. I had brought some of Ryland's favorite things to make a small memorial for him. The online community said this was a good way to increase the connection with the spiritual world. I could see my wife watching the water, a single thought in her head. I want to take one ride on the waves, Melissa told me. I couldn't think of a reason to say no, even though there had to be dozens. Please, Daniel, I need to do this. For Ryland, she insisted. I don't know why I agreed to it. Something was compelling both of us to find out the answer. All of this was leading towards something. A revelation. I could feel it. She got her board out and stood towards the shore again. No words exchanged between us. Then she was paddling out to catch a wave. I watched just like I had a year prior. I even took my phone out to grab a video. Everything was matching up the way it had before. I kept looking for something that would make the phenomenon real to me. I thought I saw a second silhouette there in the surf. Then, suddenly, Melissa's body hit the water. It looked like she had jerked forward, pushing herself into the wave. I held my breath the entire time that she was gone from my sight. I saw the board first, floating gently in the shallows as I waited for her to resurface. It was a total of 8 minutes that she was under, but the moment that she returned to me, I knew that she had seen something, connected with something. I saw it in her eyes. They were filled with hope again. Tell me what you saw," I demanded, as soon as she had finished gasping for air and spitting up the sea. "He sent something back," she said, as she revealed a handful of petals this time. "What did he say?" I asked. "I think he was trying to tell me that there is a way for both of us to communicate with him," she whispered, as the strange, glowing petals fell into the water and disappeared. "Both of us? But how? I'm not sure. Do you realize what this means, Daniel? We can reconnect with our son," she said through her tears. And just like that, we weren't enemies anymore. We were together in this. Over the course of the next few months, we shared everything with each other about how to perfect the experience, how to make it last longer. There were methods out there, Melissa said, that some in the flatliner community claimed were extremely dangerous. The kind that most didn't come back from. It's called the crossover list, meaning that they never came back, she said to me as she showed me the names. There had to be at least a few hundred. She was convinced that if we were to succeed, this would be how we would do it. There was a drug that the flatliners called N, which supposedly stopped your heart for nearly half an hour. If we could do that and place our bodies in the water, just think of what we might accomplish, she told me. We had our plan. Everything was working toward a common goal, and nothing was going to get in our way. I managed to convince Joey to help us again, just so there would be someone to pull us back from the brink. He gave us that special needle, too, for good luck, he claimed. And so it was time to get started. We had the beach to ourselves again, paddling out from shore side by side. The waves were something fierce that day, and Melissa gave me a smile, nodding as she injected the serum. I did the same, and we interlaced our fingers as the surf began to take us. It felt like lightning had struck my body. The water hit me, and I was struggling to breathe. Every part of my body shouted for me to fight back, but I was numb and unable to move. I felt my body sinking into nothingness. A vacant hole was dragging me downward, as I saw the light recede from around my body. All at once, I didn't feel my hands or legs at all. My head jerked, and I thought I could see my own face. I was sinking further into the ocean as my subconscious watching as the entire ocean seemed to fade away and become replaced by green grass. I was standing amid the field, trying to get a sense of my bearings. I couldn't make heads or tails of anything, but there was this overwhelming sense of warmth that hit my body. Elation. Then I felt something touch my hand, and I saw Melissa had suddenly appeared alongside me. The two of us walked along the field for what seemed like forever. We finally found the white tulips. There was a whole grove of them for as far as the eye could see. In the middle stood our son, with his back to us. "Ryland," Melissa said, squealing with delight. He turned and smiled at us. That same perfect smile I hadn't seen in almost 2 years. It was enough to make me want to cry. I could hear his voice in my head, and I saw him stretch his hand toward us. Both Melissa and I took a few steps forward in the tulip field, tears streaming down our faces. Joey had been right. This was a moment I wanted to never end. Our son touched our hands and smiled up at us with the same love and adoration he'd always had for us. It was like he was trying to say that he was glad we were there, and that he never wanted us to leave. He squeezed our hands a little harder and told us to take a step closer. It was like he was speaking directly into our hearts. "My beautiful baby boy. God, you are so perfect," Melissa said, collapsing to her knees and kissing his face. She touched his cheek lovingly. "Look, Daniel, even his scar is gone." I took a closer look, recalling that he had gotten the mark under his eye when he turned 5, but for the most part it had disappeared, except for the residual after effects. Then Melissa looked down at his hands and touched his palms, growing quiet as she did. He squeezed my hand a little harder, his eyes telling me that he wanted me to hold him. I was about to do it when Melissa grabbed my hand and held me back. "Something is wrong," she told me. Her voice was cracking. This isn't our Ryland," she said, taking a step away from him. I looked at him in confusion, then saw the white tulips were slowly encircling my wife's feet. I stood up and stepped away toward her, about to move out of the grove entirely, when the blinding light we had felt blistered our sight. In that same instant, we felt the vines grab hold of us and snag us to the ground, pulling us toward Ryland. Daniel, we have to fight it," my wife screamed. I looked toward him, mesmerized by those perfect blue eyes, watching as his face split apart and revealed a tendril of flesh and bone as large as his entire body. Suddenly, Ryland's body jerked backward, and his hands hit the grove, twisting and connecting to the ground around him. His entire chest collapsed and spread into 4 separate chambers, mouths that shrieked and hissed with fangs as we were dragged down. His neck extended and revealed sticky ooze that shot out and entangled our arms, making escape impossible. Then the entire grove began to collapse and draw us down into a death spiral. Below us, I could see countless bodies, strewn about in an abyss of flesh and blood. Some of them were still wailing, calling out to their own loved ones for reconciliation. It was a hungry, monstrous chasm, with a million sirens trapped inside, that would devour their souls for the rest of eternity. I looked at Melissa, clawing at the side of the monster's jaws as they began to close, desperate to climb out and back toward our world above. The ooze covered my eyes and chest as I shouted out to my wife, but I wasn't sure she could even hear me. In that frantic moment, I remembered the failsafe, and grabbed my wife, holding her as close as possible. I saw Ryland's face contort into the shape of a worm, with elongated black eyes and twisted, forked tongues, widening to swallow us whole, as I pressed the needle right in between our bodies. Closing my eyes, I felt another jolt of electricity course through my body, as I gasped for breath and coughed up salt water. It was like I had rocketed up from the depths of hell itself. As I shook myself up from the waves, I saw Joey standing there, looking surprised that I had even come back this time. I searched the waters for Melissa, finding her not a few short yards away. She grabbed hold of me, still screaming as she tried to make sense of the nightmare we had just beheld. The warning the psychic had been trying to give us all made sense now. A presence was there on the other side, just not the one we had anticipated. I listened to her entire voicemail, shuddering as the words spilled out and matched the nightmare we had just witnessed. It's calling to you now, like the ancient mythical siren did to sailors. It sings a song so sweet you simply can't resist. Your wife heard it first on that beach when she was pulled under. Now it's set the bait. Those petals you found, that is what will lure you in. The visions we had shared were not the warm invitation of our lost, loved son, but the malicious web of a cosmic spider. And it had successfully enticed us into its maw. As I sit here now, staring at the calendar and thinking about our future and about Ryland, I realize all too clearly the most harrowing and awful truth. We have become addicted to its relentless song. I could close my eyes and hear my boy's voice, calling to me from beyond the veil, whispering sweet nothings in my ear that tickle my sensibilities. How long, I wonder, will we be able to fight before it overwhelms every part of our lives? How long before we have to dip back into its unnatural maw again? I know it is there, at the cusp of a void, stretching its tendrils into my mind and pulling me down still. And yet, I know eventually there will be no fighting it, and there will be no coming back. We are past the point of no return already. And now, we sink together.
Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.